Good afternoon to everybody. I hope that your energies are slowly gearing up because for this afternoon session, we know that we are between right after lunch and the next break, which is a very unholy hour. The coffee is there, free-flowing. Please feel free to stand and wake up yourselves. Okay, so for this afternoon session, we will spotlight how lessons from the past inspire enhancements for the future. We'll explore tools, approaches, and strategies that enhance our collective readiness. So with this, let's take this opportunity to brainstorm, hence we need your brain cells, and identify breakthroughs for more resilient communities. In the morning's greeting from the CEO of the START Network, she mentioned that we are here to see where we bring funds to the right people at the right time. So basically, this is what we will also explore. This afternoon session is a continuation of the last session that we had right before lunch. So whatever questions you had then is still relevant to be asked for this next session. So joining with me in this panel for Session 3, Strengthening Readiness Through Lessons and Innovation, are Ms. Agnes Bolaños, the Executive Director of Agri-Aqua Development Coalition Mindanao, and Ms. Melanie Ruiz, the Country Manager of Humanity and Inclusion. Just a brief introduction, Ms. Agnes Bolaños is Executive Director of Agri-Aqua Development Coalition Mindanao with over 2 decades of experience as a community organizer and development worker. She has been a driving force in building sustainable rural communities and strengthening disaster resilience in Mindanao. And I'm sure you're very familiar with her. And our other panelist, Ms. Melanie Ruiz, or Lala to most of us, is the Country Manager of Humanity and Inclusion Philippines and leads country operations focused on 3 strategic pillars: economic inclusion, inclusive disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation, and health and prevention. She has a master's degree in community development and over 2 decades of humanitarian development experience in various capacities within international organizations, government, and the academe. Lala is committed to creating inclusive and sustainable solutions, underscores her impact and dedication to serving vulnerable populations and persons with disability. Without further ado, may I call on Ms. Agnes Bolaños to give us her insights for this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Maayong hapon. So I think the presentation early this morning, there are a lot of those inputs have already been discussed. I think I will just add more on our insights under AADC and CARE Consortium in Surigao del Norte. So I'll be talking about our lessons learned during the simulation. I think you have seen the simulation video played during the lunchtime. How many of you have been in Siargao for the simulation? Raise your hands, please. Oh, there are a lot. Thank you. No? Kasama pala kayo sa nagpahirap sa amin. No, just joke. Okay, so I'll start with there are 2 objectives only for this afternoon: to share our experience on the simulation and also to draw out the key lessons and recommendations that we have. So I will start, my presentation would start with the background, then the simulation exercise, and then the lessons and key recommendations. So the contingency plan of the consortium of Surigao del Norte, we covered 4 municipalities in Surigao del Norte, namely Taganaan, Sison, Dapa, and Mainit. And I'm happy to tell you that our partner MDreamOs are here this afternoon with us in this learning event. So, and our mainly our actions, anticipatory action, reflected in our contingency plan is on multipurpose cash assistance. We also have a provision of aqua tubs because this is one of the the result of the consultations we have, especially in the island barangays of Surigao del Norte, that they experience waterborne diseases during disasters. So to prevent that, we are giving them aqua tubs. And also, we have shelters strengthening. I will not explain more on this, but I want to show a video. This video is taken during our own simulation so that you would see the actual actions being taken, undertaken in the communities that we are serving for this project. Please. Okay, so I think that's very brief that captures our actions in our contingency plan for the Start Ready project. So AEDC is, we're covering 28 barangays for the 4 municipalities. So these are island barangays, coastal barangays, lakeside barangays, and also upland. So these are really the barangays that will be affected by the typhoon. So with the activities that we have done for the simulation, so as you have known, so I have here timeline, so there's an announcement that there will be a simulation because we know that simulation really is an important activity, as already mentioned in the video earlier, that it will test the contingency plan that we have, also test our assumptions on the anticipatory that we will undertake, and also to test the communication and coordination of all the actors in the area. So with that, this is the process or the timeline that we had during the simulation. So there's an announcement, then Start Ready identified one of the municipalities to be subjected for simulation, but we still don't know what municipality is that, since it's a simulation. So we have to practice that. It's like we will be experiencing the real typhoon is coming, and we will be doing anticipatory action. So Surigao del Norte prepared for such, and I think during that time, because we're covering the 4 municipalities, and the announcement is just one municipality. So we have some adjustments. We have prepared the area for logistics, and also to prepare the communities for such simulation. And especially so for the communities, because we have also announced that there will be a simulation, but we don't know the areas. And then we need to explain to those communities that will not be included in the simulation. So we also, as part of the preparations, because if we will not do it, all beneficiaries might flock in the area of distribution to get the money that we give them during the simulation. So, and then tropical cyclone scenario was flagged to initiate the start of the CIMEX. So there's a declaration already that we will have a moderate scenario for this simulation. And start ready system on tropical cyclone made operational, and we declared already anticipatory action on the PA for such anticipatory action, part of the simulation. But the back end of that, the communications, we have done, we follow what we have in our protocols. So CARE, AADC, and all other actors had been informed, and we have done the down to the MDRRMOs, our cluster leaders, because also in Surigao del Norte, part of our organizing of the communities, we have clustered them. So we have cluster leaders. So one cluster, 10 beneficiaries. So this cluster leader will take care of its cluster members just to manage lining up and even the flow of information. And then, and there's since it was already activated, and our intervention in the PA is on multi-purpose cash assistance, so we already mobilized all the actors. Actors means AADC, as you can see, the consortium is just composed of AADC and CARE. But actually, we also tap other CSO members that we have in Caraga. And this is in line with the hub that we are organizing in Region 13. So we have tapped other players in the area. So our MPCA service provider is MASPEC. It's a federation of cooperatives in Mindanao, the largest federation of cooperatives in Mindanao. Why we are tapping them? One, because they already have a system on how to do cash transfer, because they are the service provider of the government for the CCT. So they already have the system. And they also go to GDAS, those areas that do not have banks, that cannot be serviced by financing institutions. So they already have that system. So we also onboard them on this. So MASPEC, they have this system. As you can see earlier in the video, so they have the cash transfer system. They have these ATM cards, the Pinoy Co-op ATM cash online system that they have. So we use that as our mechanism to do multipurpose cash transfer. Why? We didn't, previously we tapped like Palawan as service providers, Cebuana, Laurier, we explored that. But this multipurpose cash transfer service provider cannot accommodate the numbers that we have in Surigao del Norte. Because the total number of beneficiaries that we have is For the very high is 3,713. For high is 2,263. And for moderate, 1,176. And if we employ those current service providers like Palawan, they can only serve 100 people in one day. So how can we do with the limited time that we have? We just have window of 72 hours to distribute and allow the beneficiaries to use their money. So we cannot tap the current service provider in the area. So we have MASMEC to do that. And during the simulation, since this is a simulation, all the possible, because it's a test, so coordination, so there's injections of scenarios during that time. So one of it is, I think, there's a complaint from the beneficiaries that her name is not listed. So it would be a test on how we will manage that. There are power interruptions, so we cannot use our point of sales machine. We cannot, and there's no internet. So how we will do that? So those really are tests. And there's one of the beneficiaries fainted. So is there a medical support to answer that need for medical problem with the beneficiary? So all of those, and even news, because we put some numbers on in the areas for payouts. So it was also tested if these hotlines are working or not. So all of what we can, I think the control team can think of anything that we can face during the actual activation of anticipatory action. They already integrated all that. So, and in 3 hours, we distributed at least 527 households. And out of the 556 target beneficiaries that we have for that simulation. And there's a feedbacking and post-activity assessments that we conducted. So next slide, please. So what are the lessons that we see during that simulation? One is the efficient delivery of the multipurpose cash transfer with that number of beneficiaries on a very short period of time using the Pinoy Co-op ATM system. And also, what helped us to make the simulation also successful is the understanding by the MDREAM-Os, the punong barangays, barangay secretaries, and our cluster leaders on their roles, on what they will do during anticipatory action, and also support from LGUs, like the needs that we need peace and order personnel to be there, medical team, and other support that we need, and even logistics, like transportation. So they provided that with us. I forgot to mention here, it's not only municipal and barangay, but as well during that time, the simulation, with the provincial government. So they are there. They also send people to serve as observers. And I will not mention it again. And readily available funds are critical to ensure timely delivery of MPCA. As we have known, the Start Ready funds, it's coming from the UK down to the member network, SN members, then SN members to the country, and then to us as the local implementers. So the lead time for transfer of money is quite long. But with the ready money that the members have, like CARE, they front-loaded the needed budget for such. So it's a very important key to make the MPCA successful. And also, not only CARE, at the ground level is with the MASPEC, who have done that also. Because MASPEC already contacted the cooperatives who will be doing the MPCA, so they also have their own funds to support the MPCA that we will be doing. So I already have 2 minutes na lang, so I will wrap up so that we have more time for interaction. I think I'll go to the recommendations. The challenges, I think this already have been discussed. So I'll go to the opportunities and recommendation. So as I have said, Start Ready Fund should be readily available and accessible upon activation. And we have a information, part of the challenge is that the activation, the simulation exercise have already ended, but the funds still on its way from the START network. So if we want that we will be successful in doing this, the funds should be readily acceptable and available in the area. So crucial role of the partners like the SN members and other players that we can tap to make this possible. Top community-based financial institution as partner service providers. So with our context, we tapped MASPEC to do that for us. And continuous education on financial literacy so that the people would also know where to spend their money, even though we have some orientation, but it should be continuous kasi malilimutan din nila, di ba? So continuous literacy or gender sensitivity and disaster preparedness and community resiliency. And fourth is market development and community enterprise organizing. One problem that surfaced in the discussion is that the market, if we will distribute the money in the islands, they don't have enough market to serve the beneficiaries. So it's an opportunity to develop community-based enterprise to respond to that need. So there's a opportunity for that. And this was already discussed, so legal mandate on anticipatory action. I think that's all. And lastly, simulation is crucial to ensure anticipatory action. Diba, ika nga, practice makes perfect. So, kailangan natin i-simulate, i-drill, no, habang wala pa yung sakuna para mas magiging handa tayo pag nandyan na yung actual na sakuna. Magandang hapon sa lahat.
This time we will hear from Miss Lala, her insights regarding our topic. Oh, please hold on to your questions later on. I'm sure we'll have a very, very interesting discussion after this. Miss Lala?
Thank you, Anna. Okay, are you still awake? Unfortunately, I am tasked to do the math thing this afternoon. Okay, let's talk about funds. I would like to get volunteers from the floor, please, who are good in math here. From the table there, from the Cagayan Consortium. Can I get one volunteer, please? Sige na, I only have 20 minutes. And then, can I also get a volunteer from this table? And the other one from the last table at the back. Please, if you can step in front. From this table. Okay, it's math. Now you don't want to support me. Okay, come on. All right, so thank you so much, Grace, for the volunteering. And Pascal, thank you. How about from that table? The table at the rightmost, please. Wala talaga. I will voluntold. How about you, ma'am? Ma'am. Thank you. Okay, here's the question. Thank you so much for our brave volunteers. Okay, so we've been talking about... Oh! Why are you hiding at my back? So we are talking about funds, okay? Earlier, we talked about the activation. So that is the trigger fund. But before that, we also have for the activation, we have the AA, and then we have the ER, okay? Now we're talking about the pre-activation. So there is the build, and there is the National Reserve, okay? So, can you guess the percentage of funds allocated to the build and National Reserve? So this is the pre-activation, okay? And when we activate, we have the AA, and then we have the ER. All right? Just wild guess, okay? Percentage of the total pot that we allocate for the pre-activation, build, and National Reserve. How many percent, roughly?
Less than 1.
Less than 1%. Can you say boo or yay if you agree with him? Yay. 1% of the total allocation is for pre-activation. That's what Pascal said. Why 1%, if may I ask?
I think it's really low, unfortunately. I mean, maybe it's up to 5%, but very, very low. 1 to 5, let's say.
Thank you so much. I'll give the answer afterwards. Okay, how about for the activation AA? How much? Wild guess.
30%.
30%. Yes and no? Let's see. And for the ER part, how much do we allocate? When we have activated, when we have released the trigger fund, around how much is it?
50%.
50%. I think this is the closest that we have so far. Okay, it's actually around 70% that we are allocating for the ER. Okay, when we activate, it's actually a little bit lower. It's around 20% for AA. But sadly, it's not just 1%. Yes, yes. So we have a little bit more. So around 10%. Okay, but thank you so much for our volunteers. Thank you for the wild guess. And that ends my presentation. De, joke lang. Sige, let's, the session is about lessons from Start Ready activations in 2023 and 2024. I just wanted to wake you up a little bit with some percentages. But yeah, I'm speaking about the importance of the National Reserve Fund and the build funds. But what is National Reserve Fund? So we are talking about pre-activation, okay? So National Reserve Fund, in local parlance, is actually just the emergency operational readiness funds, okay? How we are preparing for the emergencies. How about build fund? It's the contingency planning budget, okay? So it's just a bit technical, build fund and National Reserve Fund, but this is how we are using the terminology on our local daily lives. Okay, so I will be sharing about a little bit of DRF and then go directly into the build fund based on the experience of our consortium. So we are part of the Cagayan and also Eastern Summer Consortium. And then I'll be talking about the National Reserve Fund, share some key insights, and then opportunities. Okay, so we've been discussing about DRF earlier, the whole session today, but one particular DRF financing instrument is really the Start Ready. What Start Ready is doing is we are shifting the mindset, from responding to people in need to protecting people at risk. So, responding people in need to protecting people at risk. Earlier, you heard about Dr. Yula mentioning, people having dignity, people having choice. And that's very important with our work with Start Ready. So this is also risk-informed planning to help meet the cause of disasters before they happen. We ensure that financing reaches those who need it the most when they need it the most. Okay, it's actually kind of a paraphrasing what the message earlier about targeting the right people at the right time. It's really financing those who need it the most when they need it the most. And usually they need it before the disaster strikes. And also, disaster risk financing is very important because it's increasing the speed and also predictability of our humanitarian action. Okay, so the build fund. So what we have done, I think this was already discussed a lot earlier, but just to share with you some key highlights about what the build fund is. And again, when we talk about the pre-activation, it entails both the build fund and also the National Reserve Fund, which is around 10% of the total pot allocated for the consortium. So first, we assess vulnerabilities and capacities. So we would like to really understand what's the hazard profile in the area, the historical data of communities' vulnerabilities, as well as risk, exposure, and capacities. In Cagayan Consortium, as it's an agricultural community, mostly we talked about the seasonal calendar of their farming. When is the pre-harvesting? When is the harvesting season? Where is the planting season, et cetera, et cetera. So really we looked at how these affects the communities, what are the impacts in terms of their livelihoods. And also we did a lot of community consultations, especially with the most at-risk people. Then we identified the needs and gaps. These feed into the contingency plan or to the scenario plan. So these include what assistance is needed. So usually this is where the need for multipurpose cash assistance would come in. What gaps remain based on existing response interventions of the community, also of the LGU, and other actors. So let's remember, every time there's an emergency, the community already has their own capacity to be able to respond. They have their own kapitbahay who provide them food packs, who give some rice, who provide soup kitchens, etc. So these are all integrated into the contingency planning. And then third, based on all of these risk information, we design anticipatory actions and also the early action. So this is the trigger fund component already, where we have the AA part and then the ER part. Then, just to share in terms of the three scenarios, I will discuss a little bit about the risk matrix later, but not in the scientific way. But just in terms of the three scenarios, we have the moderate, high, and very high. So when we do our contingency plans, we have the scenario for AA, moderate, high, and then very high. And then we have the scenario for ER, which is also moderate, high, and very high. So normally the activities would be the same, but there's the difference between the two categories or modalities. We differ in terms of number of target beneficiaries that we will provide assistance. Why? Because it depends on the capacity of the consortium to be able to target them, especially for AA, because the window for response, okay, I should not say response, the window for anticipatory action is very limited. We only have T-3, so we say 72 hours, okay? So to be able to target a lot of people with appropriate response, we should understand what is the capacity of the consortium to be able to do that. So normally our targets for AA are lower as compared to the targets for ER. And that's why also we have less funds for AA than for ER. But yeah, these are all integrated into our AA and also response actions. Okay, last on build fund. There was a question, I think, earlier from our colleagues from the Eastern Samar Consortium, how these plans are aligned with the government contingency plan. Okay, the name or the term that we are using is contingency plan for our internal purposes, but really it's similar as well to the LGU contingency plan. And in the future, we aim to be integrated really into the LGU contingency plan. It's really not this is our internal contingency plan, and then you have the LGU contingency plan. So it doesn't really work that way. It has to be an integrated full of LGU contingency plan. And we are our interventions are really complementing, as our colleague earlier this morning was mentioning, complementing to the LGU actions. So yeah, so we align with the government plans, both for our AA and ER actions. And this includes the LGU preemptive and response procedures, and also with referencing to some of the other procedures and plans that's already being done at the LGU level. Okay, so that's build fund. National Reserve Fund. So for the National Reserve Fund, we have several activities as well. So a lot of this entails coordination, capacity building, drafting agreements and SOPs, beneficiary selection, and then as earlier discussed, we also have our CIMEX. So for coordination, we are working and coordinating closely with the provincial, municipal, and barangay LGUs, specifically with the Office of the MDRIM-O, MHO, MAO, PDAO. We're also working with different sectors such as OPDs, Organization of Persons with Disabilities, and I would like to acknowledge, where is Ma'am Bevs, our partner from Handicappables Association of Camalanyugan. Can you please stand? Thank you, Ma'am Bevs. So Ma'am Bevs and her team are also part of our consortium in terms of supporting us, leading in the disability data collection. So thanks, Ma'am Bevs. And then we're also working with women farmers groups and youth. Then in terms of capacity building, we have been training the consortium members, including us, within the consortium. So for us, Start Networks in Cagayan, there's RI, there's Tier Fund, there's HI as SN members, and then we also have our local partners, SPUP, PhilRads, and also Green Meadow. So, and for Eastern Samar, there's Save the Children and HI, and then we have our local partners, COPE, and also Caritas Borongan. So we are doing capacity building activities to ensure that we strengthen the consortium, the capacity of the consortium team members. So these are some of the trainings that we have conducted: VCA, disability data collection through Washington Group of Questions. We also had the meal training recently conducted. Thank you, Jel, when you were still with HI. Sorry. But thank you. But yeah, this is also part of our training to ensure the quality of our operations in the field. And then we looked at the sectors of intervention. So here we are implementing food security and livelihoods, specifically MPCA. And then we are also implementing some health and wash activities and protection. So, and then safeguarding as well as PCA orientation. Okay, so in terms of agreements and SOPs, we have worked with our logistics. Okay. Logistics is a very key component of our work. We cannot implement without the strong collaboration between the program team and our logistics team. So what we have done, framework agreements with suppliers, that's very important. Just to share with you, when we first activated last year, 2023, for Super Typhoon Egay, we did direct cash distribution. Why? Because we didn't have yet framework agreement with FSP in Cagayan. We have not done the mapping yet, and then we have to activate. Okay, the system is not perfect yet. We have not established, but we have to activate. And this is also one of the good things that I would like to highlight, that it provided us with this kind of flexibility and also, you know, the space to be able to learn from the activation. So during the first activation, direct cash distribution. So our colleague from Green Meadow, she could not sleep because she's just holding her bag full of cash, doing the distribution. And so we said, okay, we need to improve about really systematizing our work. So what we did was engage with a financial service provider, Palawan, and for PhilReds, we did Cebuana. So when we activated this year for Trami, from 252 households, we are now able to cover 750 households. And even less time, less, in terms of duration, you know, last year we activated 55 hours before the landfall. Now we activated 42 hours before the landfall. It was really a great work for the team, activating 42 hours before landfall. But we could not have done it if we have no service provider in place. Okay, we could not have done it if we were doing direct cash distribution. But that's how important our agreements and SOPs are as part of the National Reserve Fund. Beneficiary selection, we discussed a lot about this earlier, especially in terms of criteria use, etc. But really, it cuts the time from implementing the AA activities because the beneficiaries already know. They will just go to the financial service provider. They know already about what the assistance is all about. And then SIMEX, so here we did tabletop simulation. We also did a field level simulation. And we had some actual scenario, not, you know, actual scenario simulation, but it was not activated. So for Cagayan, we had Mawar last year. Thanks to Mawar, we felt really prepared to activate when Doksuri happened. And then this year for Eastern Samar as well, forgive me, Eastern Samar colleagues, that we did not activate. So we have some discussions really to make. But also Pipito, just early part of this month, kind of helped the team in Eastern Samar to prepare. This is, we tell them this is a dry run, an actual dry run. And luckily, or unluckily, yeah, we did not activate. But yeah, this is part of our capacity building. Okay, so I promised to show you this in a non-scientific way, but really just to share with you what the risk matrix looks like. So this is how we know in terms of when the model is activated. Okay, so this is for Cagayan. So you can see here in terms of the percentages of probability of the cyclone happening and the number of people to be affected in the province of Cagayan. So this is the risk matrix that we are using. So what happens usually is 510 communicates to Start Network communicates to the governance team, and then governance team approves of the activation. Okay, so there is the local decision making about when to activate if the triggers have been met. So yeah, so just to show this, that in terms of Cagayan cyclones, we activated twice because it reached the green one. So the green one is the moderate scenario. So the green one for AA has been met for both Duksuri and also for Trami. And then for ER, so the tricky thing with ER is that we don't necessarily need to activate ER. Okay, we have to depend on the model if it's going to be reached, if the triggers are going to be reached or not. It's not like it's a done deal already at the beginning that if you activate AA at the onset, you already have to activate ER. No, it can be withheld a little bit depending on the forecast, etc. So in the experience of Cagayan for Duksuri earlier, even before the impact, 12 hours before the impact, the ER has been activated because it was reaching already the red one, which is the very high scenario. So we activated for AA, moderate, and then ER, very high scenario. For Trami, for Trami, we activated AA, very high scenario as well. And then for ER, it was after that we activated. So it's post-crisis already that we activated. Okay. But yeah, these are just the actions that we have in terms of AA and also early response. So I'm just, indulge me for 2 minutes in terms of the key insights. In terms of the Start Ready process, really it provided the consortium enough time for risk analysis and planning that was not available when we do humanitarian action, when we do emergency response. So it allows enough time for risk analysis and planning, and that involves a lot of our stakeholders. And also, there is a space and opportunity for it to be really locally led and inclusive as much as possible. In terms of the build fund, there has been a lot of discussions and exchanges about how the contingency plan should be iterated every cyclone season. So we have done an iteration already, and this is a must. But also within the cyclone season, within the activation itself, it should also allow for flexibility and recalibration in terms of our targets, in terms of how we are meeting, let's say, geographical areas to be covered. And then just moving on quickly in terms of the National Reserve Fund, we ensure that continued engagement of key stakeholders. This is very important. And then capacity building of the implementing consortium, as well as ensuring that the contracts of those we have trained already, those part of the team, are sustained through the funding from the National Reserve Fund. And then just in terms of opportunities, we see that there's still a need to be able to look at impact-based forecasting, not really looking at one hazard, but really a multi-risk approach, integrating, let's say, for the Cagayan cyclone, but also really floods. So there are hazards that need to be part or need to be included into the discussion and also into the analysis. And then we continue to leverage the resources or funding opportunities through the existing build fund activities. And again, there is also, the mindset that we have should be really to ensure that our programming is influenced by how we look at humanitarian development and even climate change nexus. And lastly, 2023 last year, we conducted a strategy plan for the SART network for 5 years. And just to say that the lessons from all the activation, and that includes the fund allocated for the build and national reserve, should also be looked at and applied into the other hazards. So we are looking at floods, for instance, for next year. We're also looking at conflict, and then there's also drought. So not conflict pala, so drought, and then some exploratory or scoping around conflict. So that's my last slide, and thank you very much for your attention.
We're now opening the floor for your questions. But before that, allow me to ask the first two questions first, so that you can sort of have time to think of the questions you would like to ask. For the first question is addressed to Ms. Agnes. Why do you think it's important to design an operation-based simulation exercise or to set it up? Because most of the examples that they gave is very positive. But actually, the exercise itself has a lot of, as what Ms. Agnes described also earlier, injects, that the exercise is meant to fail. Can you expound on that, Ms. Agnes?
The simulation really is to test, I think, but through learning from the failure, if it's meant to be a failure for the exercise, but the failure is equivalent to lessons. So that would help us prepare more if the actual typhoon or the actual hazard that will hit our area. So I think it's really important that we have this simulation exercise. And simulation exercise would give us the window to think ahead. What are the possible bottlenecks or possible hindrances that we'll face on actual activation? So it's really a welcoming part, although it's quite hard, it's costly and time-consuming and really challenging, but it's very welcome for us to be more ready, to be more efficient and effective in delivering our services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Basically, it's really meant the anticipation of the anticipatory action is meant to happen during this time of the simulation. And really, that's where the behind-the-scene drama happens. So everything the drama happens during simulation is already practiced. So by the actual event, people are more prepared to face all these dramas that can come unexpectedly. Okay, for Ms. Lala, she already described to us the Build Fund and the National Reserve Fund. But how do you what would be very important? Why these two are critical to implement the DRF system?
Hello. Yeah, I think Start Ready is very, thought of kind of a platform that there is a funding allocated really for the operational readiness of the consortium as compared to DRF instruments. And why this is important is because this is where the capacity building part is happening. This is where we as a consortium are also building our, building our team, building our SOPs, our framework agreements, etc., to be able to ensure that we are already ready when the actual scenario happens. Without this, we will have to use our own funds and even our local partners would not have the luxury of these big funds to be able to allocate for the preparedness activities. So I think it's very important that we continue to be able to access the Build Fund and also the National Reserve Fund to support the capacity building, and we are better ready to protect people in need when in times of disaster.
Thank you for that wonderful answer. Okay, questions from the floor? Yes, Sir Ian, our first question.
Thank you. I understand that simulation is very important because it approximates the actual situation to be done in the event of the disaster. But my question is, what's the next best thing for us, especially at the community level? Next best thing to simulation, because as I understand, it's very costly. And also, if done probably several times within a certain cycle, that would amount to funding requirements also.
Next best thing, I think it's not really next best thing, but equivalent to simulation is really doing community preparedness for the communities itself. Because one of the challenges I haven't mentioned earlier is that with the beneficiaries, although they were already oriented, educated on the scenario, on who will be the one to be included in this scenario as beneficiary, and yet because as we have said that they are the most vulnerable individuals or households in the area, although they know that if you activate moderate, the high and very high will still take their chances, will still go there to the payout center and line up because of their vulnerability. But if we do community preparedness as well as capacity building in the communities, we will have less even, I think in our projection, we also lessen the number of beneficiaries that we will have for these emergencies. So it's very important that we, as Lala have said earlier, that we will need to see this not in silos, but to look at this initiative that we have on an integrated manner, that we will do this, the humanitarian development and peace nexus.
Thank you very much. Any more questions?
Hello. I have two questions. One is for Lala and one is for Miss Agnes. Earlier on, your first exercise, Lala, was to ask the percentage and to make a wild guess. After presenting and going through, what is your insight in terms of the current available Build Fund and National Reserve? Is it really enough for its purpose? And maybe what do you think? Because one of the insights also coming from the national scoping is that we need to invest more fund in building up the system. So do you think the availability of this fund is already enough based on those experience? And related to that, linking to Ms. Agnes' experience in terms of simulation, I'm very curious about understanding if there were succeeding or repeated simulation. What changes did you observe? And if local governments were part of it, what was also their insight in terms of assuming or associating it into the contingency planning or system of the government?
Thanks, Nina. And if I remember very well, you were still part of the governance team when we discussed about the allocation for the risk pool 2, I think. So I'm happy to note that the amount has, or the percentage has actually increased for risk pool 3. Thank you so much for consideration. But also it's not, I would say, very sufficient at this point, especially in terms of ensuring that the trained human resources can be continued, especially when there is already the trigger fund, when we have the activation. To say in absolute numbers, it's around 15,000 pounds per municipality per season. That's what we have for the NRF and for build cost. So again, while this has increased, I think we need to leverage more resources to be able to fund the necessary pre-activation activities. Maybe not necessarily coming everything from start ready. For instance, in terms of the training of our staff, in terms of the simulation activities, LGU also has its own funds allocated for simulation, for instance, that we can leverage, that we can have access to, as long as we have better discussions, as also collaboration with the local government unit. So I think there is an opportunity there for us to be able to get more funds allocated for preparedness activities. But yeah, we have some wins, I would say.
So with the simulation, after the simulation that we did last April and last June, we have some like small simulations that we have done with the team, with the LGUs and other actors, but it's more of the tabletop. Just to look into, we revisited the recommendations raised to us. So we discussed that with the actors, our key players in the Surigao del Norte consortium. So to address those gaps that we have. And with the LGUs, I think they are very appreciative of that. Even we just finished the enhancement of the contingency plan, our contingency plan as consortium, I think 3 weeks ago, in Butuan. So with them, they would like also to really look into these initiatives of the civil society organizations to be integrated in the initiatives of the LGUs. So we find ways, because we know we have limitations because of the legal mandate. But we look into the windows where we can, we can tap LGU resources also for the preparedness and even the actions itself.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, we have 2 questions on this side. 3. Arvin? Si sir, and then ma'am, and then ma'am there. Okay.
Nico Paclepo from Caraga State University. I would like to ask, ma'am, I think it was discussed from your presentations, pero I want to know, how do we specifically or monitor the effectiveness of our cash assistance, meaning how are they properly utilized in terms of addressing the disaster preparedness of the individual or the beneficiaries? Like, have we gauged that kung na-damage sila from the previous typhoon, were they less damaged the next typhoon event? So it means the program worked. And then on the matter of the simulation exercise, as an educator, so this is my second question. On the matter of the simulation exercises, I'm an educator kasi. So I would like to know po, do we have like programs or lectures with regards to, kasi I think mas magkakaroon ng better appreciation ang individual if he or she knows why nagkakaroon ng typhoon sa lugar niya. Bakit nasa Cagayan? Bakit nasa Siargao? And in terms of ownership of disaster monitoring, maybe we could try in developing sort of first simulation exercises of what are the ingenious ways of monitoring for potential like severe winds and typhoon, like how we try to install makeshift anemometer, makeshift rainfall gauges, tide gauges, that we don't need technical experts na mag-wait pa sila. Mismo sila, they can see, mabilis na yung wind. Okay, we need to be more prepared and all. Next would be in terms of shelter strengthening, how we try to look into indigenous ways of incorporating, kasi we have a lot of indigenous designs that actually addresses flooding, severe winds, instead of like the usual na yung roof and all. So baka we go back to our traditional roots of strengthening our shelters po.
Okay. Okay. On the first question on the impact of the assistance, sorry, I cannot answer you that because hindi pa po kami nag-activate. But I think on that would also answer dun sa how we will do the monitoring, because we already look at the whole thing of this. It included the monitoring already, what we call post-distribution monitoring. So we already have some ideas on what are the things that we need to monitor. Like in the area, there are agreements that they cannot use the money to pay debts. So we will, that's part of the item that we will ask during the PDM. Where did they use their money? If they put it, like others would say, they will buy some medicines, they will buy some food. So those areas we will look into on our post-monitoring. But on the impact, I cannot answer that. On the appreciation of the communities or understanding of the hazards, before we design the contingency plan, as Lala has been mentioned also, that we do capacity building or trainings in the area. So we did community-based disaster risk reduction and management trainings in the communities as part of our preparation, so that they would understand what's the difference about hazards, disaster, how they will know that it's coming. Yes, we are integrating indigenous informations and practices from the area. We put that in the early warning system as part of the contingency plan. So all of those are also considered. Maybe on the other technical matter on having a indigenous type of measuring the wind, maybe we need to tap on the expertise of the UST or for you, sir, on that to help us. Because there are a lot of, yes, indigenous practices, but there are also new technologies, indigenous technologies also, that's being practiced by others but not on those communities. Maybe that could be considered to look into. And also on the shelter strengthening, basically this is the intervention that we did for that is also coming from the experience like CARE. We've been doing humanitarian action, so they have a lot of experiences also on what are the types of intervention that is being done for that. So and this is blended also with the knowledge of the communities. So this is not being imposed by us to them, but it's more of we consult them and introduce if we have some new technologies we introduce, and if they adopt, then we will do that. It's more of agreement on the communities. And on the other types of what we call building back better for shelter, we have done some trainings also with the communities. It's more of the mitigation. It's not an anticipatory action. So, because in anticipatory action, we should remember that we only have 72 hours to do that. So, some of those preparations can be done before the 72 hours on the preparedness phase, not on the anticipatory phase. So, I hope I answered your question.
Thanks. Maybe just to chime in terms of the impact, how do we measure? I think 1 activation, 2 activation may not be enough to be really able to see the impact that we have. Maybe we can need a longitudinal study, for instance, to follow them through the course of many shocks that affect them. But clearly, they have been, like, especially the vulnerable sectors that they have been working with, they have been disproportionately affected by poverty at the very onset. And we know that if we do not do something about it, they will fall down further into poverty line. So, but again, I think the AATWG, in terms of the evidence and knowledge management, would be really useful if we get more information and really look into these impacts as we continue to advocate for policy, institutionalization of our AA actions.
Yes, Ma'am Joy.
Yes, good afternoon from DILGA. So, alam niyo naman, local governance kami. No? So, na-mention, actually this question is for Ma'am Agnes, and the local Dream O's who are here. Nandito ho ba ang ating mga local Dream O's? Okay, so, tanong ko lang po sa inyo, na-mention niyo po kasi na you have coordination with the LGU, the MGMOs, and other functionaries within the LGU, and they provided support. Now, if we look at the AA and ER as part of strengthening DRR-CCA governance, what do you think, ma'am, and I would like also to ask the LGMOs, are the other key role that they should, our local DREAMOs and other functionaries in the LGUs, for us to strengthen our DRR-CCA governance, looking at the AA and ER? Yes, ma'am, and
This is quite a hard question. Okay. Yeah. I think for the local government, since we have the CSOs here, it's a reflection that there's something gap in between, because usually the CSOs just fill the gap what the government has not done. So I think learning also all this, learning this new initiative, new way of dealing with disaster, I think that's the key also to better serve the constituents of these areas. And there are 3 MDREAMOs who are here. May we hear from them also?
Ayan. Okay, so we have a brave,
Sure.
we have a brave hand from Eastern Samar who would like to speak.
I'm not a DREAMO, pero I represent CDRMO po. So I'm not the head of office. Pero with the question of ma'am from the ILG, siguro the best way for LGU is to institutionalize AA, to have that enabling policy or that law. Kung i-amend ba ng 1121, it really helps. Kasi, like, in Eastern Samar, we have Oxfam. They have also that AA. So it was a good evidence or approach. They tried to lobby it to the whole province and even to the region. Pero siguro sa funding, like all the external funds, di naman yan forever. So the next best thing is to incorporate it with our national fund down to the local fund para merong accountability and co-able ba siya? What I mean is co-able siya na hindi lang basta-basta ang isang LGU mamimigay. Kasi cash assistance in LGU is not anticipatory. It is more on early recovery. Nasa last na siya, rehabilitation and recovery na siya. So there's no cash assistance. Pero this is a good approach, yung AA, kasi the community or the family itself knows what they want or they need before the typhoon. So kung sila yung magde-decide, sila yung mas makakabuti para sa kanila. Yun lang po.
Thank you. Okay. Hello po, from Surigao del Norte. Ang masasabi ko lang po, yung intervention ng LGUs in terms sa anticipatory action, dapat nakalagay yun sa preparedness, yung halimbawa kami ng logistics, so dapat naka-inline sa PPAs namin para makagamit kami ng 70% during sa AA ng start network. Para hindi na makuha. Kasi kung andyan naman, walang problema sa amin. Maka-response kami or makabigay kami ng mga logistic, lalo na sa anticipatory action. Thank you po.
Thank you very much. Ms. Riza has a question.
No, it's okay.
Okay. All right. Sir, over here.
Regarding this co-able issue, perhaps a strategy would be to engage COA towards coming up with a joint resolution with the following: DILG, DSWD, and the RMC-OCD. So if it's a joint resolution, it will preclude, because there's another COA regulation which actually requires a process. Anytime that there's local financing that will be built in, they're requiring that it follow the investment planning process. So COA seems to be going on the overreach or overregulation. Beyond post-audit, they're requiring a process which are the domains of coordinating and policymaking agencies of national government. But the solution would be to bring all these people, agencies, national agencies on policymaking, coordinating, monitoring, together with COA for the issuance of a joint resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful suggestion. For our next, yes,
Just
ma'am.
to follow up, so
Yes, ma'am.
actually, this is to acknowledge yung sinabi ni ma'am. Actually, kami po sa DILG sa government, we acknowledge the powerful role of the CSOs in local governance, not only in DRR, but in other areas within governance. And also, we are currently partnering with a lot of local resource institutes all over the country in the delivery of capacity development activities. So we thank our CSO partners for the AA. And also to inform everyone that we have just completed through a partner the competency framework of the local DRRM officers. So that's why I'm asking what other roles of that. Kasi baka pwede pang ma-strengthen yung competency framework ng ating mga local DRRMOs. Thank you po.
Thank you very much. One last question before we wrap up. Yes, Sir Ian.
earlier, nakausap ko may representative from DOF. And yung sabi, there are funds from the national government agencies that could probably be harnessed sa like AA. But the absorptive capacity of LGUs, because of the technical capacity to do proposals, yun ang kulang. Baka mayroon tayo isang agency like the SUCs that can be tapped to help the LGUs. Because the primary role of the SUCs is to do extension work, in fact, research and development. So baka yun, it might help the LGUs improve their competencies to develop and conceptualize proposals so that it has greater chances of being supported by agencies.
Thank you for that information and suggestion. Okay, one last, sige sir, last na lang, before we finally wrap up for the next session.
Sundan ko lang yung sinabi niya regarding dun sa SUCs. Probably the SUCs also can define the risk matrix or the risk registry. As Dr. Chris, wala na pala, he mentioned about hazard, vulnerable, at saka exposure. So we can define in the matrix, risk is equals to hazard times exposure times vulnerability. Then there's a risk rating. There's also a hazard rating, and there's a exposure rating, and there's also vulnerable rating. And from this, we can have the corresponding rating for the AA. For the AA, and also from the other funds like the emergency response fund, also from the ODA, etc. So we can have that matrix. And assessing this can also be redefined by a risk assessment using the risk is equals to severity, occurrence, and detection. So it can be equated in similar way. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that wonderful suggestion again. We're taking note of all your suggestions. And make sure in our next Learning Insight session, we will have all those people you mentioned and the institutions that you recommend. And with that, we would like to thank our wonderful speakers for this particular session. So just to pick up or to end this session, I would like to say that we encourage everybody to shift from responding to people in need to protecting people at risk. And with that, good afternoon, and thank you very much.